I think From just dropped one of its darkest clues yet, and if this theory is right, Ethan may have accidentally led everyone towards something terrifying. Because that final scene at the Lake of Tears, I don't think it was random. I don't think the show simply wanted to end the episode on another creepy cliffhanger. I think From may have quietly revealed what the Lake of Tears actually is. And if I'm right, this place isn't about healing, resurrection, or salvation. It's a trap. Worse, it may be connected to the biggest mystery the show has introduced all season, the idea of a story walker. Before we get into the theory, let's quickly recap what this episode actually gave us. Tabitha finally decides to help Ethan search for the mysterious Lake of Tears after dismissing his belief that Jim somehow contacted him through the broken radio. At the same time, Julie and Randall stumble upon a strange concept called a story walker, which may completely redefine how reality works in From. But the real shock comes at the end of the episode, when something horrifying begins rising from the lake after Donna's crew uncovers a giant buried rope. And suddenly, what looked like Ethan's hopeful mission starts feeling like the setup to a nightmare. Now, let's talk about Ethan first, because I think fans are misunderstanding what the show is doing with him. Most viewers are treating Ethan like he's just a grieving kid who refuses to accept Jim's death. And yes, grief is clearly part of this. But I actually think From is quietly telling us something much bigger. Ethan might be one of the only people seeing the town clearly. Think about it. Who survives the longest in From? The people willing to accept impossible things. Victor survived for decades because he stopped trying to make sense of the town through logic. Boyd survives because he moves forward even when reality completely breaks apart. Jade, despite acting skeptical, survives because he chases impossible answers instead of dismissing them. But Ethan? Ethan accepts weirdness naturally. So when Tabitha finds him trying to contact Jim through the broken radio, the scene becomes much more important than it first appears. Ethan isn't just talking to dead air because he misses his father. He genuinely believes Jim left him clues. And in a normal show, we'd dismiss that immediately. But this is From. A town where voices come through radios, dead people appear, night creatures smile like neighbors before trying to kill you. Reality bends constantly. So why exactly should Ethan's beliefs sound ridiculous? That's the first thing the episode quietly challenges. And honestly, Ethan calling out Tabitha was overdue. When Tabitha asks why Ethan went to Jade and Victor instead of her, Ethan gives her an answer that probably hurt because it was true. He didn't think she'd believe him. And let's be honest here, would she? Tabitha's biggest flaw this season has been fear disguised as rationality. Since Jim died, she's been desperately trying to hold on to logic because grief is easier to survive when things still make sense. But From has never rewarded people for pretending reality works normally. That's why I think Tabitha agreeing to help Ethan find the Lake of Tears isn't actually about belief. It's about guilt. She already lost Jim. Now she's realizing she may be also losing Ethan emotionally. He doesn't trust her the way he used to, and she feels that distance growing. Helping him search for the lake feels less like acceptance and more like an attempt to reconnect before she loses another member of her family. But here's where the episode gets really interesting. At almost the exact same time Ethan begins chasing the Lake of Tears, Julie and Randall discover the term story walker. And I don't think that timing is accidental. In fact, I think this may be secretly the biggest clue in the entire episode. Because the moment Randall finds that word in the book, From quietly changes the conversation. We briefly hear about a fictional character named Fred, an elevator repairman who spends his weekends walking through stories. Strange description, right? Except, suddenly, Julie's experiences start making a lot more sense. For a while now, fans have debated whether Julie was simply seeing visions of the past. But honestly, that theory never fully worked. Why? Because Julie wasn't behaving like someone watching memories. She physically interacted with people. She affected events. She felt present. That suggests something much stranger. And this is where I think fans might be missing something huge. What if the Lake of Tears is connected to story walking? Seriously, think about it. The show introduces story walking and the Lake of Tears in the same episode. That feels intentional. What if the lake isn't magical healing water at all? What if it's a passage point, a place between realities, a gateway, not to resurrection, but transition? That would suddenly explain why Ethan feels pulled toward it. Children in From often seem strangely connected to the deeper rules of the town. Victor understood things adults ignored. Ethan may be the same way. But unlike Ethan, Tabitha still sees the lake as fantasy. And this is where I slightly disagree with some fans criticizing her. I don't think Tabitha believes the lake itself is fake. I think what scares her is the hope attached to it. That matters. There's a difference between saying the Lake of Tears doesn't exist and saying the Lake of Tears won't bring Jim back. Tabitha isn't rejecting mystery. She's rejecting false hope. Because the moment Ethan fully believes the lake can somehow fix everything, disappointment becomes dangerous. In a place like From, broken hope destroys people. Donna clearly understands this too, and that's exactly why her conversation with Tabitha stood out to me. When Donna sees Tabitha struggling emotionally, she tries grounding her. But one line felt incredibly important, her warning against reckless desperation. That did not feel random. From almost never wastes dialogue, and if someone specifically warns against reckless desperation right before a terrifying lake reveal, chances are the show is foreshadowing exactly where this story is heading. Because what if the Lake of Tears has already convinced people to risk everything? That brings us to Ethan finding the injured bird. At first, the moment feels innocent, a grieving child wanting to save something broken. But honestly, I think this scene is terrifying. Because Ethan believes the lake gives life. What if it actually takes life? The symbolism here feels way too obvious to ignore. An injured bird, hope, healing, innocence, and then a horrifying disturbance beneath the water. It feels deliberate, almost like the show is setting us up for a cruel realization, that hope itself may be dangerous. Then comes that ending. Donna's crew finds a giant rope buried beneath the ground near the lake. They begin pulling it, and suddenly the water starts bubbling. Something begins rising from underneath, and immediately the episode cuts to black. Classic From. No answers, just dread. But let's talk theories, because I actually think there are only 3 possibilities here, and one feels way stronger than the others. The first theory is the darkest. Those were bodies, specifically failed believers, people who came before. Think about how desperate residents become in this town. Imagine hearing rumors about a mythical lake that could lead home, a hidden escape route, a miracle. Would people try it? Absolutely, especially after years trapped in hell. The rope suddenly becomes incredibly important here, because what if it wasn't random? What if people tied themselves to it before diving into the lake? A safety measure, a way to return if things went wrong. Except things did go wrong, and they never came back. The Lake of Tears suddenly sounds less mystical and more tragic, a place where hope dies. And honestly, that feels very From. This show loves taking hopeful ideas and twisting them into horror. But there's another possibility. What if these aren't failed escape attempts? What if they're remnants of previous cycles? We already suspect this town operates in patterns: new arrivals, chaos, death, repetition. So what if the lake acts like storage? A horrifying graveyard for earlier victims. The town always feels strangely maintained despite constant death. Bodies disappear. The environment resets unnaturally. What if the lake is where the evidence goes? A hidden reminder that nobody truly escapes. And when Donna's crew disturbed the rope, they accidentally uncovered what the town had buried. But honestly, I think there's a third theory that scares me way more. What if something alive was under there? And this is where story walking changes everything. If the Lake of Tears connects realities, then maybe it needs protection. Think about mythology. Gateways always have guardians. Ancient stories never let people move between worlds freely. There's always something watching the entrance, something waiting. What if Donna's crew just woke it up? That bubbling water didn't feel natural. It felt angry, like something disturbed. And if that thing turns out to be a creature tied directly to the town's deeper mythology, the next episode may finally explain why the monsters have barely appeared lately. Because maybe From has been saving something worse. But here's the biggest takeaway from all of this. I don't think Ethan is completely wrong. That's the twist. Everyone assumes he's naive, but what if he's the closest person to the truth? The problem is, kids in From often understand things without fully understanding the danger attached to them. Ethan may have found something real, something important, something connected to escape, timelines, or story walking. But just because something is real doesn't mean it's safe. And that's where I think this storyline is heading. The Lake of Tears may absolutely be significant. It may even be one of the biggest answers we've gotten yet. But if From has taught us anything, it's this. Every answer comes with a price. And if I had to guess, Ethan hasn't found salvation. He's found the place nobody was ever supposed to reach. Because whatever rose from that lake, I don't think it was random. I think the town just warned everyone to stay away. And next episode, somebody is probably going to ignore that warning.